And welcome back, everybody, to Titans Up Today. This is Jacob Vandersteen. And in Titans Up Today, we go straight to the source with leaders in business, finance, and technology. Through hearing our guest story, the goal of this episode is that you'll become more aware of your power to lead, create, and innovate. Our guest is Rama Chakaki. Rama is the general partner of TransformVC, a firm on a mission to impact $1 billion and make $1 billion. Rama, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you.
Absolutely. You were just doing some traveling, forming some partnerships for the firm. Now back in Silicon Valley, is it right?
Correct.
Excellent. And then so the Transform thesis, impact $1 billion, make $1 billion. How did you and your team form that thesis?
So our founder is very big on impact. Raed Masri has spent his life in tech, but also sees the inequities of the world and felt like tech has to do good and do business. And the two of us converged on this because I spent the last 10 years of my career working in impact in tech. And we feel the world can be a much better place if the leaders of the industry and technology would embrace all of the causes that are around the world, whether they're climate or social.
And it was about 15 years ago that you first got into social investing, impact ventures, and things like that. What experience was most formative to bring you into this space?
So it was a very unlikely place to launch an impact. I was working and living in Dubai, and most people only saw the glitz and glamour and the beautiful buildings and hotels. But I always was looking for what's missing and started volunteering in centers for special needs and looking at communities that weren't as fortunate, and realized that there was a lot of that, not just in Dubai and the neighboring countries, but also in the region. Went to refugee camps. And the more I looked, the more I saw that this was a common problem globally. When I would come back in the summers here in the US, I would be working with communities that were marginalized. And that's when I started thinking, okay, the tech world needs to embrace this. And so I launched a technology incubator that focused on impact and found all the entrepreneurs that cared about it as much as I did.
So if someone wanted to start being more impactful and intentional with their life, would you recommend a similar path, or what would you say to someone who's maybe thinking about it or wants to get on this journey?
I think first is to look at your own community and see where there are challenges and opportunities. And we're all affected by climate, so that's always a good place to start. But then now, fortunately, there are a lot of impact incubators and accelerators. And even at a university level, there are organizations within universities that care about sustainability. So it's really many different entry points. I favor community because if you start with the communities that you live in, it becomes a lot more personal and you end up caring about it that much more.
So it's start with what's close to you, figure out something that matters to you, and just go ahead, take action, and get involved with the people around.
Absolutely. And then to scale it, there are amazing books out there. One that really affected me is called Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. And it's actually a Harvard Business School publication, and it's taught at Harvard Business School to open the eyes of the capitalists among us that there is a fortune in creating impact. It's not just philanthropy, it's actually business models that are proven successful.
And you mentioned before in other interviews that I've seen with you about aligning the heart and the mind, the masculine and the feminine, right? There's just a different sort of viewpoint that you bring to the table. Do you have a specific process that you would recommend to somebody who wants to maybe get more in touch with that and just be more aware of that sort of that way of thinking to inform a better path forward or make better decisions?
Absolutely. So again, as far as books are concerned, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari is a great example of that. And it talks about an investment banker's journey into creating more impact. But for me, I can't be in three places at the same time. I can't have my heart in one place and mind in another and body in a third. I do a lot. I'm very active and I get a lot of inspiration from nature. And while I'm in nature, I'm always contemplating the things that are meaningful to me. And so that alignment happens there. And then I bring that to the workplace and encourage all of my colleagues to have a really active life, because if you're not active, it's like water. If it stays put, it gets dull, there's mosquitoes, but if it's moving, it's cleansing and it's much more energetic and it brings value. And so we are like that. And I feel if we practice on a daily basis to be physically fit, we're more likely to come up with these brilliant ideas and things that change the world. And in moving, we get in touch with the communities all over that we can impact. And then as far as heart is concerned, we all come from a place where we need that connection, the meaningful connection. And we can find it if we adopt causes in our communities. And then the mind is there. Everybody who works is utilizing their mind. So that's the easiest part.
Mm. And then so that personal philosophy, we talked a little bit about the action steps to go out and get involved with something that maybe resonates at that level. But is there some experiences that you had that helped develop that philosophy behind what you do and how you think?
Yeah. So I was watching a TED Talk by Alain de Botton, and the TED Talk was called Atheism 2.0. And he had a book called Atheism 2.0. And he was inviting atheists not to be dismissive of religions. And whether you're practicing or non-practicing or an atheist, you look at religions as the most successful institutions in history. They've been able to amass people from all over the world. And whether they're doing well or not, you have to look at them and say, what tactics did they employ to build those masses around them? In that talk, he gives some examples, like having that long-term vision, connecting in nature, speaking in the language of the people. A lot of business people make things really complicated, but storytelling remains the most powerful way of engaging customers and investors alike. Building a community for entrepreneurs is essential. Companies that succeed the most are the companies that can rally a community with passion. We look at Apple. Everybody cares about Apple. It's that kind of sense of belonging. We're bound by these devices that we use. And this community also comes to your aid when you're going through the dips of your company's life cycle. If you're low on money, if you're low on resources, if the entire market takes a dip, it's usually your community that comes to support you and bring you up. So these lessons, we actually invite our founders to think about, reflect on, and practice and learn from that.
So what are some examples of that, or maybe principles to keep it at a level that might apply to everybody? What are some principles of how to engage better with the community, build those positive relationships, and be there maybe for others as well if they're in need? How do you build a strong community like that?
So the first and foremost is communications. We invite our founders to communicate with us regularly. If they don't have time to write to us in detail, we ask them to send photos of what's going on in their company on a day-to-day basis. We invite them to give us some key metrics or statistics. And I think statistics, when you're talking about impact tech investing, are the most important. So when we first meet a founder, we'll say, okay, what is that one point that you're going to change, that one point of impact? Is it how many lives you're saving, or is it how many young men and women you're teaching? And then just give us that one metric again and again. So in that communication, in person or remote, you could really, it could change your trajectory with your VC and with the larger community that you work with. People are more forgiving when you're telling them what's happened, what's happening. And then the second part is the humility in communication. So tell us what's right, but also tell us what's wrong. And if you tell us what's wrong and you reach out from the heart and saying, look, I'm struggling with this or that or the other, then you're very likely to get that support and not just reporting the polished good news.
And how have you seen founders that you've worked with transform over the life cycle of their company?
I think it's been quite positive because we're breaking down these formal barriers. A lot of people think business, formal, formality, but when you break those barriers down and bring that element of humility and community, people start talking to us like we're family members, or friends rather. Let me not say family, but friends. And when you're speaking to your friend, you're telling them what's going on truthfully. And then that friend can give you back the feedback and the support that you need. So we've seen a great transformation. Once people started seeing, especially some of our AI founders that started with thinking business, accelerated growth rates, the minute that impact penny dropped and they started understanding it, they're coming to us with a lot more value and excitement, because now they're seeing that my company is going to bring the high returns, but it's also going to have this amazing impact that I never imagined would before. So it's really a much stronger founder, I think, that this ends up becoming. Yeah.
And what about your personal goals? How have they shifted over the years with working with different industries, different founders, different experiences and partners? How have your personal goals shifted, or have they remained relatively the same or same at the core?
So I love the snowball effect. When I started in 2005 working on impact, we were talking about this one particular ed tech business impacting 400 students. Now we're talking about impacting 400,000 students. So the experience that I've amassed over the years has allowed me to think in a much more scalable fashion and to work with founders that have bigger dreams, bigger visions, and at their fingertips are technologies that are much more robust. So whether it's bringing gaming into schools to teach STEM, or taking children out of the classroom to learn about climate in a much more effective way, the scale is just much bigger and more global.
And then have you observed any similarities between the founders who have been most successful that might be unique or even unique to Transforms?
I think the one thing that's common with founders I worked with in 2005 and now is they always see something that others don't. And the VCs that win are the VCs that are able to really listen in and try and understand what that vision is. And it really is incredible. You'll have 5 people in the room. Most people will be dismissive, but only a few people will say, there is something in that. Let's double down and let's give this founder more time. And oftentimes those are the winners because they're just imagining a future that's beyond the rest of us.
And do you have it at your firm where some see it, some don't? And how does that play out from the inside
We
of
have,
a VC firm?
yeah, we have a fellowship. Thankfully, both my partner and I have developed a good sense of those founders, know how to spot them. For the rest of our team and the fellowship that we're teaching, we're always inviting them to round 2 discussions. They'll come to the table and they'll evaluate a deal, and at the surface might say no. And then over time, they start learning what to look for and how to listen and what are the key messages to pick up from founders, the difference between arrogance and assertiveness, the difference between humility and insecurity, and the difference between really having an insight versus having an unfounded dream. At the end, data matters, and those who have a long-term vision that others may not see can back it up with data and data points, whereas other dreamers that don't have a real kind of grounding in reality end up not being able to back up their stories.
And you invest and get engaged at the earliest stages, pre-seed, some seed, is it?
Pre-seed and seed. And then we do follow-ons with founders we like that prove they're able to meet the milestones that they say they're going to meet.
And if you're hearing a pitch or receiving a message, there's the early stage 5-part framework: team, product, problem, solution, traction. Which of those are most important to you? And is there a weighted factor in this? I always think it's the customer value to me. That's what I always try to really focus on if I'm working with a company to raise capital or building my own company as well. It's how are we changing the customer's life and how much better is that than the rest of the market? But I'm curious, because you receive pitches and see them all the time. And what really sticks out to you and what do you look for?
Yeah, absolutely. The customer value is really important, but there are some businesses that are looking beyond the customer to the customer's employees or to those who bring a stakeholder approach and say, these are all the people that I'm impacting, our investors, our customers, employees. We typically measure the technology on the one side and say, we're looking for companies that have deep tech, that have at least a 10x advantage over their competition, or they have a network effect. And in that network effect, they can build a moat around their business. We couple that with impact, and the impact is also 3 layers: who the founder is, who they're employing, and what community they're affecting. And so we usually will have a weighted average on all of those. And who they're impacting becomes probably 1/6 of the entire picture. Because while very important, the customers are customers king, the approach and the process could lead to a great customer outcome, and the lack of one may also, lead to a not so good outcome.
And when you quantify those 10x benefits, how do you see founders doing it? Because that's one of the big things I work with people on as well is, hey, we're doing this for this market, but then quantifying it sometimes is the hardest part, whether it's a reduction in cost or an increase in these different factors. What are some winning 10x formulas that you've seen in the businesses you've invested in?
So when we're looking at some disruptive technologies and seeing, are the founders capable of creating that 10x advantage? So it's the characteristics of the founders, it's their ability to build a sound business model, it's their knowledge of the industry they're operating in and minding the gaps that are in that industry and being able to say, my beachhead, where I'm going to get to first and establish a presence is going to make it so difficult for others to come in because no one else can enter from this point. So they go to market strategy and their unique characteristics and approach, and then their knowledge of the sector. Some founders come in with the dream of having an impact, whereas others have already tried and tested it. And my favorite are the self-taught founders who don't necessarily have to have studied something or been from that industry, but they come to the table with this incredible wealth of knowledge and an approach where they've gone and talked to everybody who's anybody in that sector, and they can tell you exactly what the opinions are of all of the players in the sector.
So it's more of, you have your product, that sort of value, but it's really the whole business, the founders, everything driving it should be 10x better than what the standard is in the market.
Absolutely. And the founders that you feel like this is part of their life. They tell you the story. They don't have to say, excuse me, let me open the deck, but it's heart and mind. It's there. I know it. I live it. I breathe it. And then they have a sense of curiosity. If they feel for a second that more than they do, they switch it to learn mode. And then they start asking you the questions of, and they're taking notes. And so I think that curiosity is essential to a founder's character.
And if you were to put together a list of just the last 3 years, the most influential people, what did you learn from them?
It's a long list. I think, to me, the constant influx of information, especially about our industry, has been invigorating. So I'm always listening. And I think that Samir Kaji hosts a Venture Unlocked podcast that is fantastic. I learn from it every time because he has nuggets from all of the VCs out there that we work with and compete with at the same time. So that's been really, from the founders, I'm amazed by what they're able to find in AI that I can't see, and finding that fit of AI with healthcare or AI with fitness. So I'm learning. I can't say there's any one thing that I've learned, but the amalgamation of all of it is what's been really impressive.
And these last questions go together quite well. When we're thinking about how much AI is changing the world, it's hard to calculate and it's really exciting. But on top of that, there are the younger generation, as they're coming up, their jobs are going to be completely different. You took the path of an engineer and entrepreneur and made it to where you are now. What are the insights you would share with young people who aren't sure about the future? And again, we even have some questions about the future and we're hitting it.
I think the best way to predict the future is to learn about the past and see those pivotal moments of when the industrial age came about or when the internet came about and how that transformation happened. The winners were the people who boldly embraced it and said, there's a piece of it in there for me, and I'm just going to learn as much about it and see where I fit in with my skill set. And it's usually the most unlikely people. Those who grew up in an industry aren't necessarily the ones that are going to be seeing it differently. So my advice would be embrace AI. There are a lot of new platforms out there. One of them is a portfolio company called Explain, and it allows product managers who have no concept of AI to go in and dabble and create models and pipelines and do it without any insights into how to code, but just through verbal command language. And so for me, inviting people into it and saying, learn it, read about it, know that you can be a part of it. Don't listen to the noise about it's going to take away jobs. It's going to transform industries. but we will still have a role to play. We will still have innovation and creativity, and most importantly, emotion on our side. Right now, AI cannot do emotion. We can, and that's a real gap in the market that we can, hold space in.
So as part of making those decisions, there's risk involved, whether, again, you are a founder who's on their fourth company, or a 15-year-old kid making a decision about what's next and what classes they want to take and things like that. What's your perspective on risk taking, both personally and professionally, and how do you model and view risk to make those sort of decisions?
So look, I was lucky because I had a major cardiac event in my 20s, and it made me realize, sitting in a hospital where I was with everybody over 80, that life is transient and short and quick, and you have to just jump. And so I invite everyone to take as much risk as they can when they're younger, because that will pay off when you're older. It will open up your eyes to what is out there, and it'll have you iterate quickly through your mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes, so you might as well do a lot of them when you're younger and you can afford that. And while you're doing this, develop a methodical approach that fits you, so that you can say, okay, lesson learned, next. And how do I improve on the one that I've made before? The other thing that I would highly advise our listeners to do is travel. You learn so much more about opportunity. And we're at the forefront here of AI, but there are a lot of countries that aren't. And you'll have tremendous opportunity to bring the knowledge that you have from the States with you over there, and do well and do good at the same time.
And you mentioned the cardiac event. You were 27, 28, was it? Or
yeah.
So you mentioned that, and I did a little reading on that, and it seemed that it was obviously life-changing for you. And my question is, how would you impart that wisdom that you gained from that experience to somebody who's just listening? And because you learned a lot, I think you changed your life after that, and you've been thriving ever since, just going forward in life. So how could someone learn from that experience and get that sort of wisdom that you were able to gain from that?
Certainly. I was in the hospital, or several hospitals, for a good year and a half of my life. And I had reached a point where the doctors, the experts at NIH, were saying, we don't know what to do. And so one of the doctors said, you know your body best, and you have to be able to figure out how to self-heal. And being in a place where the doctors are telling you, we don't know what to do, you have to do it, is both scary and empowering. And you start thinking, okay, I have what it takes to survive. And so there was a major attitude and personality shift for me, from it's someone else who's going to take care of me to I take care of myself, and I can self-heal through having the right attitude on life. And so I started adopting a positive attitude and removing all negativity from my life, whether it's people, relationships, thoughts that were scary. And the minute that I felt a little bit better, I took my two little kids and went on a trip to Disney and rode on all of the roller coasters, because I used to love roller coaster riding. And then I thought, with this heart condition, I'm not going to be able to. And I did, and I was fine. And I live with a pacemaker and defibrillator for the past so many years. But for me, it was breaking the fear, feeling the sense of empowerment, and then knowing that it's our feelings that oftentimes dictate our health. So if you're feeling bad or sad or depressed, it's those feelings that can, if you transform them through fitness, through awareness, through reading the right books, through being surrounded by positive energy and positive people, that can really change your life. And for anybody who's in that mode or space, start with just reading books that are empowering, and then having thoughts that are empowering, and living a healthy life. And from living that healthy life of eliminating a lot of the junk and a lot of the medication and alcohol and things that may have a negative effect, with the guidance of your doctors, it is transformative. And just maintaining and guarding that all your life.
And what was that feeling when you were going on the rides in Disney?
It was incredible. We had such a blast. It was so much fun. And from that, I went to climbing or hiking up mountains, to becoming the first certified scuba diver who had a pacemaker and a defibrillator. I mean, to me, that became my life, and a life of pushing boundaries and thinking I can do it. I can do all of it with calculated risk.
Is there any advice you have for somebody who wants to make a change and maybe gain something from what you just said there? They want to make a change. They want to start a business even, or what's something that you would say to someone like that?
Start with doing the thing that you enjoy the most out in nature, whether it's walking or swimming or running, because honestly, that connection is just priceless. And once you start doing that, whether it's sunshine or cold or desert or whatever, it'll open up. And this is chemically proven. Your brain thinks differently, or your endorphins kick in, and you'll start coming up with these ideas, and then journal your journey. And if you put yourself with these 30-day challenges and say, for the next 30 days, this is what I'm going to do, achieve it, and then go to the next one, you'll end up after a year, a totally transformed person.
Wonderful. That's amazing. How can we engage with Transform and support what you're doing?
We love fellows and interns, those who care about impact and tech. Please apply and join us. We started an initiative called Impact a Billion, where we're inviting other VCs, nonprofits, partners, anybody who cares about impact and understands that tech can play a role in it, to join us. And it's impactabillion.com. You can reach out to us there. And founders, we would love to invest in you. So please pitch your ideas on our website.
Awesome. Rama, it was a pleasure to have you here on Titans Up today. Everybody, now that you've watched this, start thinking about how you can utilize self-healing and all the insights that Rama has provided us here today to make your life better.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode of Titans Up today. What did you learn from it? Make sure to drop a comment below with your most valuable insight so that other people can engage in the conversation around what this speaker brought to the table. And then on another front, make sure to subscribe so that every time we drop a new episode, you will be notified. And that way you can keep fueling your dreams and your brain with fresh insights, which can help you along your journey and along your path to your goals. So thank you so much again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next interview.